I wanted to take the opportunity to explain the use of literacy journals in AP Environmental Science. We have a wonderful textbook, and that textbook has many different features that we will use, and we'll use those to leverage different literacy skills that are necessary for us to be successful throughout the course and later on in life. Not only will we use the textbook, but we'll also use other supplemental resources to end up creating what will become a learning document for you. The whole idea of the literacy journals is that it's based on the idea that gaining knowledge is based on processing of information, and that this process is a skill that can be refined by creating the right critical thinking framework. When we look at this critical thinking framework, I'll refer to it as the initial decoding part, the primary processing, and then the secondary processing. We will always be working through those processes to help us understand exactly what it is we're doing. So you ask, what are the literacies? The literacies that we look at are actually quite significant. We have mathematical, writing, reading, communication, technology, financial, economic, business, and entrepreneurial literacy, global awareness, environmental literacy, civic literacy, and health literacies. These all come from different sources that are all necessary. Literacies are basic understanding that you can make decisions based off of the opportunities to evaluate what is needed at the time. These are referred to as themes within our class. So as you can see, the chapter openers are actually the initial decoding and then the initial primary processing. So you're going to do the summary piece, and that's the decode, and then the implications become the primary processing, or the first time you're trying to process information. The responsibility is actually individual. When we do simulations, you are taking that knowledge and you're kind of moving it to a secondary piece and trying to end up processing it with a group. The doing the math is a decoding piece. It's all about mathematics, and that is typically driven by the teacher in the front of the room explaining how that works out. At the end of the text, or at the end of each chapter in the text, the working towards sustainability is there, and that helps you refine your ability to interpret information. So you're going to do a decode, and then you're going to do a primary processing, and that tends to be done with a brainstorming in a group. And then you're going to take it from a primary processing to a secondary processing when you do final submission. So it's more than likely you will have conversations with peers in your group talking about the working towards the sustainability. So there's nothing wrong with that brainstorming, but in the end, you have to produce the work yourself. And so it cannot be the same wording. So you can't copy each other, but you can actually think about the ideas in that regards. We will also look at some case studies, and the case studies will help you refine your ability to decode primary process and secondary process all at the same time. And these tend to be individual. As you can see, the chapter openers are from the textbook, along with the doing the math and the working towards the sustainability. The simulations, many of them I have created, so those are supplemental pieces, and the case studies we use a resource that helps us understand those pieces a little bit better. So again, as we look at chapter openers, each chapter starts with a chapter opener that introduces students to an environmental situation. In your literacy journals, students need to identify the facts of the situation and then come up with implications of the situation. So that would be the decode and into the primary process. When we look at simulations, simulations are going to be group responsibility. They illustrate real life situations, but with confined parameters. So you take your primary or your prior knowledge and newly acquired knowledge and apply it into a different situation. In your literacy journals, you will identify the significance of the simulation to the current topic being discussed, and you'll be able to identify the big picture of the sim. This is working through the decode and the primary processing piece. Doing the math is a guided responsibility. You'll be guided through by the teacher. Students record important points from the concepts being addressed. And this is actually, in one snippet, going to be both decoding, primary processing, and secondary processing. Working towards the sustainability is actually going to be a group responsibility when it comes to brainstorming, and then individual responsibility as a final submission. So again, the idea is that you can work together to think about it, but then you have to end up doing the work by yourself for the final product. So the groups will decipher information together, the literacy journal will provide you pre-writing space, and then final submissions will be typed and recorded to show your growth. This takes the information from the chapter and makes it from a primary processing to a secondary processing. Case studies tend to be individual responsibility. So they're culminating assignments that have a real life application. You're supposed to illustrate the application of knowledge that you have gained, and the literacy journal will provide a pre-writing space, and the final submission will be typed. This puts everything together with a decode, primary processing, and secondary processing. So as you can see, the whole idea for literacy journal is to actually build those characteristics that you need to be successful later on. And that's why we end up doing literacy journals in AP Environmental Science.